My Lords, I am opposed to Lord Stevenson's regret amendment, just as I was totally opposed to the EU state aid rules for many years, and in fact it's one of the reasons I voted to leave in 2016. I was glad to escape them then, and I don't want any further delays, if I might say. I note with some irony that this means that I will be supporting the order put forward by my Honourable Lord Callaghan, because I have noted over the years, before the referendum, that even the most ardent Eurosceptics in the Conservative Party were rather lukewarm in highlighting the egregious nature of the EU's state aid rules. Indeed, Margaret Thatcher was happy to use those rules to roll back the state at home. Whereas, in contrast, it was the Eurosceptic left, I know that they might well be a dying breed, there's a few of us left, who for many years objected to the EU's state aid rules. The likes of the much-missed RMT leader Bob Crow, and indeed the Right Honourable former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, and others on the left, like myself, who recognised that these were anti-democratic rules because whatever policy the UK electorate might vote for, if they involved certain state subsidies to create new jobs, to help certain industries survive, industrial policy and so on, they could be blocked. The EU rules stipulate that governments need to notify the European Commission in advance to get permission, which is an affront to popular sovereignty and why I support this order. This outrageous mechanism, which allows the Commission to overrule elected finance ministers and claw back payments, is uniquely prescriptive in the world, and it goes far further than other economic blocs, such as the World Trade Organization. The WTO allows subsidies by default, and prior notification and approval are not required. And despite what my Honourable Lord Liddell might say, that makes them more democratic than the EU. So apart from noting the irony that today's Labour Party seem to be keen to retain the EU's anti-worker, anti-state rules, and the Conservative Party seem committed to escaping them, I think it's worth considering why there's so much focus on state aid in the withdrawal agreement negotiations, and indeed here. Surely it can't be because the EU thinks that the UK will be chomping at the bit to increase state aid once free from Brussels, or think that the present government are likely to launch a mass nationalisation of industries campaign. After all, even when in the EU, Britain conducted less approved state aid than most of the EU members. In 2018, Britain's official state aid spending amounted to 0.34% of GDP, about half the EU's average of 0.76% and far below Germany's 1.45%. So I ask my Lords, why does the EU and its avid Remain cheerleaders here in the UK constantly take such a robust stance over rules that cover a relatively small part of the UK's GDP and indeed overall state spending? I would suggest this seems more politically than economically driven. After all, state aid rules are often used by the European Commission as a mechanism for asserting the overall authority and supremacy over its member states on pain of punishment and at expense of their sovereign rights when EU state aid rules are used as punitive and enforcing mechanism. So while the UK has formally left the EU, it seems that maybe they want to use the state aid to curtail the UK as a genuinely autonomous nation. And that's why I think it's quite right, by the way, that the government has sought to protect against a maximalist interpretation of Article 10 in the Northern Irish Protocol, because it could give the European Commission extensive jurisdiction over subsidies granted throughout the UK. It's why, as an aside, Clause 45 was so important to be retained in the Internal Markets Bill, but more of that another time. But more broadly, regardless of the economic impact of adhering to any version of the EU's state aid rules, the main issue is national sovereignty. If the British people want more nationalised industries or state support, it is they and not the European Commission who should have the final say. Finally, much hectoring we've heard from some of my honourable friends in this House about the importance of sticking to international rules. But interestingly, despite the rigidity of the EU's state aid rules, as a matter of international law, those same rules were effectively waived during the European lockdown-induced recession recently, just as they were during the financial crisis of a decade ago, allowing for emergency bailouts and job protection schemes, which rather calls into question the supposed inviolability of international legal rules in all instances. My Lords, is this a case of one rule for them and another rule for the rest of us? I want to get rid of state aid rules as quickly as possible.